Rain pressed against the tin roof of the garage, each drop echoing like a slow countdown. Inside, the dim light of a single bulb swung gently above a battered workbench. Tools lined the wall in neat rows, their steel edges catching flashes of white from the lightning outside. The CCTV camera mounted in the corner of the shop hummed, its red light blinking steadily as it framed the empty bay floor. At 11 p.m., the silence fractured. A black and white patrol cruiser skidded to a stop just outside, tires hissing against wet concrete. The engine roared, revved high, and then sputtered. The hood popped open from the force, steam pouring upward. In the grainy CCTV feed, the car's headlights cut through the rain like two white knives. The driver's door swung wide. A boot hit the puddled ground, and then flames burst beneath the hood. The sound was sharp, metallic, followed by a whoosh of ignition. Fire licked upward in seconds, climbing fast, painting the inside of the garage in violent orange. The officer's voice cracked through the open radio. "Dispatch, Unit 3-4, vehicle fire." The words drowned as the flames roared louder, feeding off gasoline. A window exploded, shards scattering across the wet floor. The camera shuddered slightly from the concussion. From the shadows outside the frame, the sound of movement scraped, boots on gravel, heavy and deliberate. The officer stumbled backward, his silhouette jerking in the glare of the burning car. "Officer down!" The voice screamed now, more panic than command, bleeding through the radio and echoing against the garage walls. Sparks spat into the air, bouncing off the soaked asphalt like fireflies in reverse. The flames consumed the cruiser in under a minute, glass imploding, steel groaning under heat. The siren wailed faintly once, then cut to silence, the system melting. The CCTV lens stayed steady, clinical, showing what the naked eye might miss. A hand, gloved, oily black, tossed something onto the wet ground. The object landed close to the garage threshold. A pair of mechanic's gloves, coated in grease, limp in the rain. The flames reflected against the rubber palms, making them shine unnaturally bright. Thunder cracked above, timed as if punctuating the gesture. Smoke seeped into the camera's vision, a gray veil shifting across the frame. For a moment, the officer's shouts blurred into static. The radio caught between bursts of fire and rain. The only constant sound was the growl of the engine still turning, metal clashing inside as the fire devoured its last breath. By 11:04 p.m., the vehicle collapsed inward, roof buckling with a hollow boom. The camera zoom did not change, but the detail sharpened as the rain washed soot from the garage wall. There, above the char line spreading across the concrete, something stood out in red. Letters, sprayed bold, uneven, dripping. "Now you pay." The paint glistened wet, running down like blood diluted by storm water. The flames framed the words in shifting light, orange and red dancing against crimson paint. The officer's shouts dimmed, replaced by the low crackle of fire eating through metal. A shadow crossed briefly near the camera's edge, too fast to identify, gone as quickly as it appeared. The feed stayed locked on the burning patrol car, the gloves, and the message, an unbroken tableau of destruction. Rain kept falling. Sirens grew faint in the distance, approaching fast but still too far to matter. The garage door rattled once in the wind, then held still. The camera froze its eye on the scene, a single frame capturing all of it. The officer staggering outside the burning shell, the gloves abandoned in the wash of rainwater, and the words bleeding red across gray concrete. By 11:07 p.m., the radio went silent. The screen showed only fire, smoke, and the dripping letters, each one unraveling slowly under the storm. The last line clear before the haze swallowed it all. "Now you pay." At 7 a.m., the town woke slow. Neon bled from a diner sign onto cracked asphalt, the letter N flickering in a tired loop. Buses sighed at the corner stop. A train horn rolled in from the river and faded. CCTV above the diner door caught a man in a gray work jacket wiping rain off his cap before stepping inside. His name tag read. He took a stool near the end, nodded once at the server, and watched steam rise off a black mug. By 7, 8:18 a.m., a security camera across from Reed's garage recorded a corrugated door lifting on its track. The lens showed the interior in a widening band of light. A framed Navy certificate hung crooked above a pegboard lined with wrenches. A faded photo in uniform rested next to a box of brake pads. On the back wall, a chalk line of measurements ran across primer gray fenders. A glass jar sat on the bench with masking tape on its side, written in marker "Shop Fund." He counted bills with greasy thumbs and slid them in. At 8:03 a.m., a school bus security feed caught a girl with a backpack jogging past the corner, waving at Reed as he rolled a tool chest into place. She ducked onto the bus, the door folding shut. In the same frame, an older woman in a church sweater carried a grocery sack up the steps to the apartment above the garage. The bag tore slightly. Reed grabbed the bottom, steadying it with one hand. The camera recorded a short exchange. The woman laughed. He nodded. The door closed. A patrol unit idled across the street at 8:27 a.m. Dashcam showed Officer Kyle Denton behind the wheel, a jawline hard in the reflection, eyes tracking the garage bay. The radio whispered a code and quieted. The cruiser pulled forward 2 feet, then stopped. The wipers ticked. Denton's gaze held on the jar on the bench, the Navy photo, the car chassis on jack stands. He keyed the mic and said nothing. He only watched. 2 months earlier, at 2:14 p.m., bodycam footage documented Denton stepping into the same garage. The bay door was up. Reed stood by the lift. The camera angle tilted as Denton moved past the threshold without a warrant shown. He tugged a drawer open with 2 fingers and flipped through receipts. He kicked a drip pan. He leaned toward a permit on the wall and grunted. His voice carried. "Got permits for that lift." Reed pointed at the framed document. Denton did not look. Not good enough. He pushed past a fender and left a smear of dust on the paint. A neighbor's porch camera at 8:51 p.m. on a Friday showed Denton's cruiser angled across the curb, lights pulsing without siren. Reed stood with both palms on his hood, spread wide. The officer pat-searched him, then popped the trunk and rifled through a milk crate of tools. Another unit rolled up and parked tight to the bumper. A voice carried from the sidewalk, sharp and flat. "Hands visible. Do not move." After 5 minutes, the units pulled away. Reed closed the trunk and returned to the garage, the camera catching his shoulders set forward under the streetlight. Inside the diner at 6:35 p.m. on a different night, a flat screen over the counter ran local news with closed captions, no sound. A Chiron Reed community meeting on policing. Phone video played. In the booth reflection, Reed's profile was visible next to the window, motionless. The server slid a plate into the frame. Across the glass, a cruiser crept by. Denton's eyes found him for a second and kept going. On the opposing wall, a corkboard held paper flyers. One card at eye level in bold letters advertised a church choir. The photo showed the same older woman from the apartment holding a hymnal. At 1:22 p.m. on a humid Saturday, gas station cameras recorded Reed by pump 6, filling a red can. He wore the same gray jacket, zipped to the throat. Denton's cruiser eased in behind him, blocking half the exit lane. The mic at the register captured the greeting tone. The door chimed. Denton walked in, set a coffee on the counter, and pointed through the window. "Keep that can capped before you leave." Reed capped it, nodded, and paid cash for a roll of shop towels. The camera watched him load the trunk and drive off. Denton waited until he was gone, then left without the coffee. Footage from a church basement at 7:11 p.m. showed folding tables stacked with styrofoam plates and a row of candles in paper cups. The older woman from the apartment ladled soup. Reed stood near the door, speaking quietly with a teenage boy pointing toward a dented bicycle. He knelt, spun the rear wheel, and adjusted the brake pad with a pocket tool. The boy nodded. The wheel ran true. In the corner of the frame, a bulletin board listed an event, Food Drive Sunday, 9 a.m. Nothing else moved. At 4:50 p.m. on a cloudless afternoon, a tow truck camera captured Reed accepting a delivery. A '69 Chevelle body. Bondo seems pale along the quarter panels. He lifted the tarp, checked the VIN plate and ran a finger across a rust line at the rocker. By the next morning at 9:32 a.m., the same camera saw parts lined in order on the bench. A dog-eared catalog lay open to a page with circled prices. He taped a note to the wall. Intake, 4 bolts missing. The shop fund jar held more bills than the day before. At 3:06 p.m. on a weekday, Denton stood in the garage entry with 2 other officers. Bodycam recorded the sequence. He touched the top of a door frame, checking for dust. He sniffed near an open gas can and looked at the camera. Strong odor, probable cause. Reed pointed to a sealed container and a posted safety sheet. Denton wrote on a pad, tore a slip, and flicked it onto the bench. He leaned closer to Reed and spoke low. "I can shut you down." Reed said nothing. The other officers stepped back into the light, hands on belts, watching. The oldest recording came from a cracked phone, shaky and grainy, but clear at the center. Time stamp read 9:42 p.m. A convenience store lot hummed under humming sodium lamps. The phone panned left and caught Reed with palms high, back to a cinder block wall. Denton held a handgun at eye level, the muzzle 4 inches from Reed's forehead. His voice was clipped and cold. "We got a theft call, you match." Reed did not move. A clerk's voice came thin from inside. "That's not him." Denton did not look. His arm did not waver. The camera pulled tighter, the pixels breaking at the edges, the metal ring of the muzzle centered between Reed's eyes. Denton's next words were clean enough for the microphone. "One move and you're done." A cruiser rolled through the edge of the frame, slowed, and kept going. The phone shook, dipped, and rose again. Reed's shadow pinned flat to the block. The slide of the gun shone under the light. Denton's free hand pressed Reed's chest. "Don't blink." The recording ended with a slap of a door and the sound of Denton's radio clicking live. The report filed that night listed suspicious activity and no force used. The video showed a barrel aligned with a skull for 20 seconds and a charge that never came. The last image held on Denton's finger, tightening around the grip, and on the corner of the frame where a diner neon flickered red across the concrete, as if it were counting down. At 7:41 p.m., Main Street held a slow line of cars under soft neon. A laundromat door stood propped with a brick. A bus idled at the curb, its interior lights washing the sidewalk in dull gold. A dashcam captured a gray sedan with a dented rear quarter panel rolling at the limit, right blinker working, plate light clean. A chirp of siren cut through traffic. The gray sedan signaled, "Ease to the gutter," and stopped beneath a flickering pharmacy sign. At 7:42 p.m., the patrol unit slid in behind it. Bodycam clicked live with a tone. Officer Kyle Denton stepped out, baton in his left hand. His boots splashed a shallow puddle. The dashcam framed the scene center-wide. Driver window halfway down, both hands visible on the wheel. Denton approached, angled his shoulder to the gap and rapped the baton against the hood. The sound was sharp and hollow. He rapped again, harder. The sedan rocked once on its shocks. From the laundromat doorway, a phone camera locked on. The frame bobbed and steadied. The witness held the angle high enough to see the street lamp glaze shining off the hood. The officer's voice carried, "License and registration." The driver, identified by jacket patches Reed, passed documents out 2 fingers at a time. Denton did not take them, hands on the hood. The baton lifted. It landed with a dull smack. The car alarm chirped, then fell quiet. At 7:43 p.m., another phone feed went live from the bus stop. The angle was lower and closer. A toddler cried in the bus aisle. The driver shut the door and held position. Denton stepped to the front bumper and pointed, "Out, now." Reed opened the door with both hands visible and turned, palms out. He moved slowly to the front of the car, placed his hands on the warm metal and spread his feet. Denton tapped the baton against Reed's forearm. "Higher." Reed raised them. "Good boy." The words were flat, the mic picking each one clean. A third video came from a corner store camera mounted above a rack of ice. The lens showed the cruiser lights throwing red and blue across a graffiti-tagged wall. A second unit rolled through the edge of the frame and kept going. Denton ran the baton across the hood again, then slid it to his belt and pressed his forearm into Reed's shoulders. He patted once at the waistband, then yanked. The sound of seams straining cut through the recordings. "Stop moving." The command came hard. Reed's stance did not change. The officer's forearm pressed down. At 7:44 p.m. the first blow landed. The laundromat camera caught it clean. Denton's right fist, short and fast, struck the side of Reed's face. A slap of wet against metal followed. Reed's left hand slipped and smeared the hood with red. The bus stop camera shook as the witness gasped. A voice from off-frame shouted, "He's not fighting." Denton's reply came like a snap, "Back up." The baton flashed again. It struck the hood twice and then Reed's ribs. The sound went dull, then heavy. Reed slid down the bumper, knees hitting asphalt. Denton yanked him forward and drove a knee into his back. By 7:45 p.m., radio traffic spiked. "Dispatch Reed a unit and a street. Backup acknowledged." The corner store lens recorded a cluster of people at the curb, phones held high. A woman's voice threaded through the ambient noise. "Badge 135. Get his badge." The bus doors opened. Two passengers stepped onto the sidewalk, hesitated, and filmed. The bus engine continued its idle drone. The neon pharmacy sign clicked on and off, casting a slow pulse over concrete. Bodycam audio picked up the static of Denton's breathing close to the mic. "Give me your hands." Reed's palms were already visible, pressed flat to the asphalt, fingers spread. Blood ran from his cheekbone to the gutter and flowed along the curb in a narrow, bright river. Denton cuffed one wrist, then jerked the second arm back hard enough to lift Reed's shoulder off the ground. "Stop resisting." The words repeated. "Stop resisting." He pressed Reed's head to the pavement. The camera angle shifted as the officer leaned his weight. The mic captured a scrape of skin across road grit. At 7:47 p.m. the first horn sounded. A driver trapped in the slow lane leaned on it. The dashcam logged the tone as a thin, steady whine behind the scene. A teen on a bicycle rolled into the frame and was pushed back by a second officer's arm. "Stay behind the line." The second officer faced the crowd, one palm out. Denton stood over Reed and adjusted his belt. He looked up once past the cameras and smirked. The expression held for a single beat, then flattened. The laundromat phone zoomed in. The image pixelated, then focused again, locking on the curve of his mouth. At 7:48 p.m. an ambulance was called. The radio noted the request and an estimated time. The corner store camera saw Denton flick his wrist. The cuffs clicked tighter. Reed's face lay half-turned to the street, eye open, cheek pressed to wet tar. Blood mapped a wide V under his chin and ran off the edge of the frame. A woman in a floral shirt stepped forward and shouted, "He's bleeding." Denton pointed at her chest. "Back up." Now she stopped. The crowd shifted. Phones rose as one. By 7:49 p.m. the teen's live stream climbed in viewers. The screen counter ticked past 300. Comments scrolled at the bottom, bright against the dark. "Get his name." The teen swung the camera to the cruiser door where a placard read Denton in block letters. He swung back. Reed tried to lift an elbow and was pushed flat by Denton's forearm. "Stop resisting. Stop resisting." The words kept their rhythm, steady as the bus engine. The baton struck the rear fender this time, a metallic punctuation mark that made the crowd flinch. At 7:50 p.m. the ambulance rounded the corner. Its lights strobed white against the storefront glass. Two paramedics stepped into the frame with a kit and a backboard. Denton held up a hand and spoke. "Wait." They froze. He tugged Reed's shoulder once more, then nodded. They moved in. One paramedic slid fingers along Reed's neck and called out a number. The second cut a line down the side of the gray jacket and taped gauze to the cheek. A disposable suction tube clicked on. Blood filled the line. The press arrived at 8:02 p.m. A local stringer with a camera and a long lens shot from across the crosswalk. The lens captured Reed on the board, face slick and bandaged, eyes closed, wrists cuffed at his waist. Denton stood off to the side, posture squared, chin up. He turned once toward the camera and narrowed his eyes. The stringer snapped 3 frames. The images later ran above the fold. By 10 a.m. the next morning, the chief held a press conference in a wood-paneled room. A row of microphones crowded the podium. Cameras from 3 stations rolled. He cleared his throat and read from a sheet. Marcus Reed resisted arrest. He paused. Officers used appropriate force. Questions fired across the room. One voice cut above the others. "What about the videos?" The chief looked down and repeated the phrase, "resisted arrest." The words landed in the same order. At 2:06 p.m., a public link went up for bodycam footage. The clip opened at 7:44 p.m. with Reed already on the hood. A time code in the corner ticked cleanly, then skipped 12 seconds. The screen smeared and returned. The blow to the face did not appear. The baton strike did not appear. Audio carried only the tail end of a command. Hands. The clip ended with Reed on the ground, cuffs visible, paramedics kneeling in. The system filed the video as complete. At 5:31 p.m., a records request landed with the clerk at the precinct. The teens live stream, the laundromat video, the dashcam, the corner store feed were listed by URL and time. The clerk stamped the form and slid it into a tray. A camera over her shoulder captured the motion and the stack of files around it. On a shelf behind her, an evidence locker glowed with a small green light. The clerk keyed an entry into a log and stood. At 7:12 p.m., the evidence room camera showed a metal cabinet door opening. A uniformed back filled most of the frame. A hand in a black nitrile glove reached in and removed a drive labeled Street Seizure A. The door closed. The green light held steady. At 7:19 p.m., the same camera recorded the door opening again. The hand returned the drive and set it down at a new angle. The door shut. The light held. The log did not note either action. 2 days later at 9:03 a.m., the public record folder updated with a line in small print. Exhibit C unavailable due to technical error. A refresh icon spun in the corner of the screen. The file name grayed out and stayed that way. The teens link still played. The laundromat clip still played. The corner store video still played. The official bodycam remained the same. The original from the bus stop, the one that caught the first punch, showed a dead link. At 9:05 a.m., the records clerk clicked the entry twice and frowned at the spinning icon. The overhead camera saw the cursor hover and drift. In the evidence room, the green light blinked once and steadied. A paper tag on the cabinet handle swung, blank on both sides. The screen froze for a breath, then jumped. The folder showed no change. The cabinet door stayed shut. The log stayed clean. The hallway outside ran quiet and long. The last frame held on the cabinet seam while a clock on the wall ticked toward 9:06 a.m., and the open question hung in the air with it. Where did the original go? At 9 a.m., the courthouse doors opened under a gray sky. Security cameras caught a slow stream of bodies moving through metal detectors. The lens over courtroom 4 showed a wooden panel chamber filling by the row. 12 jurors took their seats, all white, their faces steady in the fluorescent wash. The district attorney sat forward with a yellow legal pad, pen tapping once, then still. At 9:14 a.m., the defendant's chair scraped. Officer Kyle Denton leaned back, suit pressed, shoes polished to reflection. His mouth bent upward into a smile. Across the aisle, Marcus Reed sat stiff in a navy jacket, bandage visible beneath the collar. A court officer adjusted his chain of keys. The judge entered. All rose. The shuffle of chairs and fabric filled the mic. By 9:22 a.m., the first witness was sworn. The state framed its questions sharp. Did you resist? Did you pull away? The officer on the stand nodded. Yes. The jury watched without shifting. Marcus lowered his head, hands folded tight on the table. The DA rose again. Objection. The word cut through, hard and final. The judge's gavel tapped once. Sustained. Marcus's attorney tried to speak. He was silenced mid-sentence. The transcript recorded the interruption, bracketed in all caps. Objection. At 10:05 a.m., a projector flicked on. Screens above the jury displayed edited footage from Denton's body cam. The clip began after the first strike, showing only commands, "Stop resisting." The jurors leaned in. The DA pointed to the timestamp. The defense objected, overruled. The clip ended with Marcus cuffed, face blurred by gauze, paramedics kneeling in the frame. The courtroom stayed silent. Denton's grin flashed again in the corner of the image. By 11:30 a.m., the jury recessed. Local reporters filed into the corridor. Microphones swung toward the hallway. One voice asked, "What do you expect today?" Another followed, "Do you think the jury is fair?" No answers came. At 12 p.m., the county news site updated its banner. "Known troublemaker faces trial." The article repeated lines from the chief's press release. It described prior stops, alleged noise complaints, and unnamed sources. No mention of the livestream video appeared in the copy. At 1:06 p.m., cameras above the courthouse steps caught Denton lighting a cigarette, laughter spilling from his mouth toward two colleagues. He mimicked swinging a baton with one hand, shoulders jerking, eyes narrowing. The men chuckled. A young reporter captured the gesture with a telephoto lens. The still showed the arc of his hand midair, cigarette glow at the edge of the frame. Inside at 2:14 p.m., Marcus took the stand. The microphone on the desk picked up his account. He described the stop, the baton strikes, the blood on the pavement. Halfway through his sentence, the DA rose again. Objection. The judge's gavel tapped. Sustained. The transcript stopped his words mid-clause. The jury shifted papers, one member scratching a pen. Denton's attorney smiled thinly, shook his head, and leaned back. At 4:22 p.m., the verdict was delayed to the following day. Cameras showed Marcus leaving through the rear exit, flanked by his sister and mother. A patrol car rolled slowly behind them as they crossed the lot. By 5 p.m., two unmarked cars idled at the curb across from his garage. License plates logged by a neighbor's door camera matched precinct pool vehicles. Their headlights stayed dark. Engines idled until 6:47 p.m. when both cars pulled away together. At 7:12 p.m., a window of the garage shattered. A rock clattered across the concrete floor, glass crunching under the bench. The external camera captured only silhouettes fading into the alley. Inside, shards sparkled beneath the bulb, grease smears reflecting the fractured light. By morning, a slur was sprayed in white across the garage door. Police logs showed no report taken. At 8:01 a.m. the next day, Marcus's mother walked to the corner store. Surveillance showed her pausing as a black SUV rolled slow past. Its tinted window dropped 2 inches, then rose. She gripped her bag tighter and entered the store. The SUV idled for 32 seconds before turning out of frame. At 9:14 a.m., his sister left for school. A sedan followed her for 3 blocks, then peeled away. A neighbor's footage caught its rear plate obscured with duct tape. Court reconvened at 10 a.m. The jury filed in again. Denton sat straight, jaw relaxed. At 10:32 a.m., the judge read from the bench, "Charges dismissed. Insufficient evidence." The words echoed flat through the room. Denton exhaled a laugh audible in the mic. He leaned to his attorney and whispered, "Too easy." Reporters scribbled. Cameras flashed. The gavel fell once. Case closed. By 11 a.m., headlines scrolled across TV tickers. "Jury clears officer. Suspect resisted arrest." The photo above the copy showed Marcus in profile, eyes down, jaw set. The caption read exits courtroom after dismissal. At 12:47 p.m., Marcus's garage door was keyed, deep scratches running the length. The side mirror of his car was torn off and lay cracked on the asphalt. No patrol logs listed any calls. At 6:21 p.m., a security camera across the street captured a figure slipping a plain envelope through the garage mail slot. The camera zoomed once, catching only a gloved hand and a dark hoodie. The figure turned away, face angled from the lens and vanished into rain. At 6:25 p.m., Marcus returned, stepping over the scattered glass. The camera above his door recorded him stooping to retrieve the envelope. He turned it once under the light. The seal was blank. No address, no name. He tore it open with his thumb. Inside was a thin USB drive, unmarked, wrapped in white paper. Scrawled in black marker across the fold, "Keep this safe." The paper shook once in his hand before he slid it into his jacket. The camera framed the motion, clean and sharp. By 6:28 p.m., the garage door shut behind him. Light from inside spilled for 2 seconds, then went black. Outside, the envelope drifted in the rain until it stuck to the curb. The lens tightened. The paper's ink blurred into a single unreadable streak as water soaked through. The last frame locked on the curb, the ruined envelope dissolving under streetlight. Above it, the garage sat silent, its windows dark, while in its walls, a hidden copy of the missing video had finally arrived. The question that lingered was not who sent it, but what it would show when played. At 11:16 p.m., the garage camera watched Marcus Reed slide the USB into a scarred laptop. The screen threw cold light across the bench. A paused frame of Main Street appeared. He clicked. The video ran. Denton's baton flashed. The punch landed. Blood hit metal. The timeline at the bottom ticked in white squares. Reed froze, rewound, and advanced frame by frame. The printer on the lower shelf fed out stills one by one. He clipped them to a corkboard with binder clips. The camera held on a hard line of images: hood, fist, blood, cuffs. At 11:27 p.m., an overhead angle showed a city map unrolled on the work table. Colored pins went into corners, radiating from the precinct to the diner, the church, the gas station, the bus stop. Red string ran between them. A second monitor displayed a spreadsheet with patrol numbers, days, and rough times. His hand wrote a name in block letters on a yellow pad. The shop fund jar sat near the elbow, bills fanned and counted. The camera recorded the cash sliding into an envelope labeled equipment. At 12:03 a.m., hardware store CCTV caught Reed at aisle 9. He placed 2 dome cameras, a coil of cable, a pair of motion sensors, and a pack of AA batteries into a red basket. He added electrical tape, nitrile gloves, and a black hoodie. He paid cash. The clerk counted change into his palm. The receipt printed, folded, and disappeared into his jacket. By 12:42 a.m., a gas station attendant watched Reed set a pair of shop rags, a small flashlight, and a pack of zip ties on the counter. The register camera recorded the total. He tucked the items into a canvas bag, nodded once, and left. Outside, a rain line hung low under the streetlights. His sedan pulled away slow, taillights smearing. At 6:58 a.m., a neighboring storefront camera saw Reed on a ladder against the garage facade. He measured a corner with a tape, drilled, and fixed a small dome to the brick. A second camera went up on a signpost across the street facing the alley. At 7:22 a.m., he fed cable through conduit and sealed it with tape. He checked the laptop feed. 4 boxes lit up in a square. He named them Alley East, Bay Door, Street Front, and Office. At 8:11 a.m., church basement footage showed him delivering a cardboard box to a folding table. Inside were 3 cheap prepaid phones, still sealed. He left 2 on the table and kept 1. A woman in a choir apron told him, "Leave them for tomorrow's drive." He nodded, pocketed the 3rd, and left. The camera remained on the box as it sat under fluorescent light, labels bright and clean. At 9:15 a.m., library surveillance recorded Reed at computer station 6. He slid bills into the printer kiosk and typed. The screen showed a blank document filling with lines of bold text. The words scanned clean into the lens on Zoom: internal complaint. Officer K. Denton, conduct unbecoming. Attached, images. He loaded the stills from a thumb drive, pasted 3, and printed. The printer rolled pages into a stack. He placed them in a manila envelope with no return address and sealed it with the heel of his hand. By 9:21 a.m., a post office camera captured him at the wall of blue mail slots. He slid the manila envelope into a slot marked Interoffice and let it fall. A postal clerk rolled a bin past the lens. The bin's metal edge flashed. At 2:34 p.m., an internal affairs hallway camera filmed two suits opening the envelope. They flipped through the pages under a desk lamp. The first pointed with a capped pen at Denton's name. The second scrolled through an email inbox on a monitor. He whispered who sent it. The audio bled at the edges, but the shrug was visible. The camera caught the folder sliding into a red tray labeled Priority. At 4:06 p.m., the precinct commons camera watched Denton step in with a paper cup. Two officers stood at the vending machines. One lifted his chin. "IA knocked, Kyle." Denton snorted, "False." The second nodded at the cup. "Keep it clean." Denton's jaw flexed. He smiled without teeth and turned away. The camera held on the sideways glance that followed him to the door. At 7:11 p.m., a municipal lot camera panned across rows of pool cars. The lens paused on a black and white with number 34 stenciled on the bumper. A figure in a gray jacket moved into the frame, crouched near the front wheel well, and clicked on a small flashlight. The beam drew a thin white line. The figure's hands worked close, fast, mostly hidden by the fender. After 20 seconds, the figure stood, wiped the flashlight on a rag, and walked off between cars. The camera followed as far as the third row. A gray sedan idled near the exit. The plate glimmered but stayed unreadable in glare. At 7:03 a.m. the next day, Denton slid into Unit 34, dashcam booted. The radio clicked alive. A weather report ran for 10 seconds. He pulled out, turned right, and merged onto the main. At 7:29 a.m., his foot went to the brake at Pine and Taylor. The dashcam showed his shoulders jolt. The cruiser did not slow. He swore once sharp. "Unit 34 brakes." The word came choked by static. Traffic camera at the corner recorded the cruiser barreling past the stop line, horn blaring. Denton yanked the wheel. The car clipped a concrete bollard, scraped a parked van, and spun half around. Tires screamed. It stopped against the curb. Steam hissed. Denton climbed out, breathing hard, eyes wide. He smacked the hood with an open palm and keyed the mic. "Mechanical issue. Send a tow." "I'm good." The tow arrived at 7:46 a.m. The operator hooked the front and winched. A mechanic's inspection later noted a severed line and filed a report. At 10:12 a.m., the precinct hallway camera caught whispers as Denton walked by. An officer in a blue windbreaker said, "Lucky." Another said, "Twice in a week with your name in a memo." Denton stopped, stared, and let the silence press. He said two words, "Watch yourselves." He moved on. At 12:38 p.m., the diner television ran silent footage of last night's brake failure, a civilian clip from a window above the street. Captions read, "Cruiser loses control. No injuries." Read 8 at the far end of the counter, profile in the booth glass. He left cash under the coffee and stepped out into the sun. The door camera followed him across the street to his garage. At 1:05 p.m., his bench camera recorded metal against metal. A grinder sparked in short bursts. He filed a length of steel into a blunt hook and set it aside. He wrapped tape around the handle of a heavy wrench and placed it in a canvas bag. He coiled thin chain into a tight circle and taped it at 2 points. He tested a new camera mount by rattling the signpost with his knuckles. The picture steadied after a moment. He jotted a note under the map. Roll call 6 p.m. At 2:52 p.m., the public phone at the corner captured an outbound call of 21 seconds. Dispatch tone. A male voice at a low pitch said, "Officer meeting a known dealer behind Fowler Tire at 8 p.m. A click ended the call. At 5:14 p.m., a text pinged the IA inbox from a masked address with a short line. "Check Denton's trunk. Cash bags." A scanner screen glowed green for 1 beat and dimmed. At 6:03 p.m., roll call room audio logged the lieutenant's brief. "IA contacted me. Allegations are being reviewed, all contacts recorded." Denton stood at the back, arms folded. A voice in the front row said, "Copy." Another added, "Heard your brakes went out." Denton replied with a flat tone, "They're fine now." The room absorbed it. Door closed at 6:09 p.m. At 7:58 p.m., a camera above Fowler Tire looked into the alley. A cruiser idled at the far end. No one stood beside it. Two plain sedans slid to a stop near the dumpster, headlights off. Doors opened. Silhouettes fanned, then paused. One said, "Nothing here." Another said, "He plays games." The cruiser's brake lights brightened and faded. At 8:05 p.m., the alley stayed empty. Radios hissed and then went quiet. At 9:31 p.m., the precinct lot camera recorded Denton popping his trunk. He shuffled a duffel and a kit bag. A sergeant walked by and did not break stride. He glanced once into the open space, then away. Denton zipped the duffel and shut the lid with both hands. He looked up into the dark glass of the admin wing and smiled at his reflection. At 10:44 p.m., Reed's office camera watched him draw excess through times on a wall calendar. He folded a stack of maps and slid them into a drawer. He checked each new camera feed on the laptop. Street front showed the diner neon stuttering. Alley east showed a cat crossing between cans. Bay door caught a moth circling the bulb. Office framed the corkboard of stills and the yellow pads layered with names and arrows. At 11:02 p.m., he lifted a rubber mat near the drill press. The office camera tracked a metal seam in the floor. He pried a flush square free with a screwdriver and lifted. The lid revealed a steel lockbox half set in concrete. He keyed it. The lock turned. He raised the lid by the ring. Inside lay a manila folder thick at the spine, its tab stamped OIS 2015. Beneath it sat a smaller envelope with a chain of evidence tags still attached, its string torn. He drew out the folder and opened it on the desk under the lamp. The top page read use of deadly force review. Officer, Denton Kyle. Decedent, Harris Jamal. Age, 17. A black and white photo showed a high school portrait pinned to a report. A second photo, grainier, marked with a date, showed a street corner taped off and a chalk outline near a storm drain. A ballistic worksheet lay underneath with a match line from service weapon to extracted fragments circled in red pen. A statement form, unsigned, bore the header witness and a scribbled name with the last letters blacked out by a thick marker. A clipping from a local paper ran the headline, "Teen shot during stop. Investigation ongoing." The office camera held steady as he lifted a plastic sleeve and tilted it. A spent casing slid inside its pocket and tapped the edge. He set it down and turned another page. A note card typewritten fell out and landed face up. It read, "Closed without discipline." The time stamp in the corner of the camera feed ticked to 11:09 p.m. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far and then faded. He placed the folder back into the lockbox and reached for the smaller envelope beneath. It was heavier than it looked. Unmarked. Unsealed. The lid of the lockbox reflected the lamp in a bright oval as his fingers found the flap, and the feed froze on the moment just before he opened it. At 6:02 p.m., the church custodian propped open the side door to the basement and taped a paper over the main entrance that read "Fellowship Hall closed." A hallway camera watched feet and knees pass under the lens, a slow line of people carrying folders, tote bags, and phone chargers. Inside the basement, a fixed dome camera showed folding chairs in a circle and a long table against the wall with a silver urn, paper cups, and a stack of tissues. Latrice Cole entered first, hood up from rain, then pushed it back. She set a notebook on the table and clicked a pen. The camera caught her voice steady. Names only. No addresses. At 6:12 p.m., a volunteer placed a small black camcorder on a tripod near the wall. The red light blinked. Former tenants sat in view, shoulders tight, hands around cups. A woman with a bruise fading yellow along the jaw leaned toward the mic. He changed the locks. No notice. A man in a work jacket shook lint from his sleeve. Heat off all winter. Kids got sick. A teen with a shaved stripe behind the ear lifted a cracked phone and played a voicemail on speaker. The voice on the recording was male, clipped, "Pay or leave. Last chance." The camcorder caught each sentence clean, no music, no applause. At 6:29 p.m., Latris stood beside a corkboard and pinned up photocopies. Lease pages, late notices, photos of mold, a picture of a broken doorframe with splinters around the latch. She wrote a word in thick marker at the top, Frank. A second line followed, Realty Partners, then a row of addresses across the bottom. A deacon stepped into the frame, shut the basement door, and slid the bolt. The camera watched hands fold and unfold, watched eyes lift to the board and drop to the floor. A voice from the back said, "He pushed me." Another voice said, "He laughed." The camcorder kept the distance, lens silent and unfriendly. At 7:03 p.m., a side room door opened. A box of tea lights clattered onto a table. A woman in a floral blouse placed 3 in a row and lit them with a match, then blew the match out and waved smoke away. Latris counted hands with a raised finger, the number held at 23. The camcorder recorded a final line from an older tenant in a denim shirt. "He put hands on my son." It ended there in a flat echo. By 8:41 p.m., a mural camera on the brick wall near 5th recorded the first loop of paint. 2 figures in hooded jackets moved fast, one spraying wide, one filling in. "Justice for tenants" curved across the rough surface, white letters blooming under sodium lamps. A car rolled by slow, brake lights red against the paint. No one stopped. At 8:49 p.m., a second wall at Raven and 3rd got the same message, the last S dripping like rain. At 9:12 p.m., Latris's mother set a candle in a glass on the living room table. The apartment camera at the bookshelf recorded her hands moving careful and slow. She lit the wick. The flame wavered. She touched a finger to a framed photo and set it beside the glass. The TV ran a choir recording on low volume. She turned the sound down further and sat. The light of the candle reflected in the plastic of a remote control. No one else moved in the frame. At 9:34 p.m., precinct briefing room audio recorded chairs scraping and fabric rustling. The lieutenant stood in front of a map. His finger tapped a cluster of addresses. "Expect retaliation. Keep it quiet." A voice from the back male answered from who. The reply came clipped, "Tenants, friends, strays." Another voice said, "They burned flyers last spring." The lieutenant nodded once. "Hardened patrols. Non-essential exposure is done." At 10:06 p.m., a feed from a realtor office lobby showed a janitor stacking pamphlets on a glass table, the top brochure embossed with "Real Partners in Housing." The bell on the door made a chimed note. He locked up and turned out the lights. The camera switched to night mode. The street scene outside pressed flat against the glass, rain tracing lines down the front. At 12:41 a.m., a lot camera behind a narrow apartment building pointed at a line of cars. A sedan with a mirror tag reading owner hung closest to the gate. 2 figures slipped into the frame with shoulders hunched and faces covered by scarves. One unscrewed a fuel cap, then stepped back. The other produced a short glass bottle, stuffed tight at the neck. A lighter flared once, twice. The rag caught. The bottle arced. The woof of ignition hit the mic. Flames lifted quick. The figures ran, tires softened. Paint separated from metal. The plate warped as heat rose. Sirens sounded faint and then grew sharp. A window above the lot lit for 2 seconds and went dark. At 1:09 a.m., the mural camera at 5th caught people gathering. Phone screens lifted, white squares against brick. Someone shouted, "Say something." A voice near the lens said, "Not here." Steps drummed off concrete. A shopping cart rattled. The paint shone wet. A police cruiser turned the corner, slowed, and kept going. The camera logged the time and the make of the car. By 1:52 a.m., a second fire started, this one inside an alley trash bin behind a strip of offices. Smoke crawled under a steel door, then curled upward and blackened a sign that read Mallory Property Group. When the glass broke, the office camera woke to a scene of falling shards. A brick skidded across carpet and came to rest under a desk. Another brick flew. A chair toppled. The front window bowed and let go in 1,000 beads. A printer threw out a blank page and beeped helplessly until its power failed. The alarm made a constant note that grated through the feed. At 2:06 a.m., two patrol cars boxed the alley. Bodycam footage showed officers with flashlights slicing light along the threshold. One officer stepped inside, boots crunching on broken glass. He moved a photo frame with the toe of his boot. The picture inside showed Frank shaking hands with a man in a blazer against a banner for a groundbreaking. The officer said one word: "Noted." Another called in possible arson. No injuries seen. The recording ended with a pan across a desk where a ring of keys had once hung on a hook, now empty. At 6:58 a.m., church basement cameras showed the door bolt slide back. Sunlight edged the floor. Latra stacked chairs by the wall. A box of donated diapers sat half open. New posters were laid flat, bold letters ready to be taped. She added fresh copies to the corkboard. Receipts stamped paid, a city inspection red tag, a text screenshot with the words "New lock today." Her phone face down on the table vibrated once and stilled. The camera held on her hand as it paused over a thumbtack and pushed it into cork. At 11:15 a.m., the local news played looped footage of the two fires on a split screen in the diner. The captions read: "Landlord vehicle targeted and office vandalized." Customers ate in silence. A man in a booth said, "This city's next." The waitress poured coffee and nodded at the TV. The screen split again to show graffiti. "Justice for tenants" filled the fourth quadrant, bright as a road flare. At 2:21 p.m., Real Partners conference room camera recorded three men in shirt sleeves pointing at a list taped to a whiteboard. Two addresses were circled in red. The middle man spoke first. "Evictions hold." The second pointed. "Not those." The third shook his head. "Phones are flooded." A printer in the corner clattered to life and spit a page. A receptionist peeked in with a finger to her lips. "Quiet, please." The door closed. The camera's clock advanced another minute and stopped in a frozen block of digital gray, then restarted without time lost. At 7:04 p.m., Latrace's mother lit another candle on the same table. The first had melted to a shallow dish of wax. The apartment camera saw both flames flare when the hallway draft pushed under the door. She turned off the lamp and sat with a paperback closed on her lap. A police radio crackled faint through the window from a unit idling on the street. She looked once toward the sound and then back at the candles. The screen caught the reflection of blue light sliding along the wall and fading. At 8:33 p.m., precinct lounge cameras showed officers in clusters, soft talk close to vending machines. One said, "It's payback." Another answered, "They'll swing wider." The television over the fridge showed the two fires again with a red banner. Denton passed through the frame with a styrofoam cup and did not pause. His face kept to the center line. A younger officer watched him go and said under breath, "Retaliation." The soda machine hummed until the compressor clicked off. At 10:57 p.m., the night desk officer signed for 3 envelopes in the mail log, each brown, each stamped with a white label printed with the word "Records." He slid them across a scanner and placed 2 on the clerk's desk. The third he set aside while he answered a call. The lobby camera saw a woman trying to buzz in at the intercom, speaking too fast to be understood. The officer held up a finger and took another call. The third envelope sat alone, edges curling as the heat kicked on. At 11:12 p.m., the mailroom camera showed the clerk slit the taped seam and shake the contents onto a blotter. A single brass key slid out, landing with a metallic tick. It bore a cheap black plastic cap with a clear window and a paper insert under it. The name Frank was printed in all caps in ballpoint. Along the teeth and bow of the key, a reddish-brown crust had dried in thin flakes. The clerk touched it with the tip of a pen and drew the pen back with a speck clinging to it. The lens tightened. The clerk's pen tapped twice. He whispered, "That's blood." The audio caught the word flat. At 11:13 p.m., the clerk lifted the envelope and found no note. He turned the key in his palm and held it up to the task light. A tiny red thread was wrapped once around the shaft, barely visible until the light hit it. The thread caught and broke, falling to the blotter. The clerk looked to the door and called out, "Sergeant." The sergeant stepped in, eyes on the key, and said 2 words, "Who delivered?" The clerk pointed at the log. The signature line for that entry read, "Delivered, no courier listed." At 11:14 p.m., the camera over the doorway caught the sergeant holding the key with a tissue and slipping it into an evidence bag. He wrote 1 word on the label, "Key," and 1 name, "Frank." He sealed the edge, pressed it flat, and initialed. He paused a second, then turned the bag sideways and held it closer to the lens. In the reflection off the plastic, a tiny notch was visible above the third tooth, shaved at an angle not from wear but from a deliberate file notch. He lowered the bag. The camera clock advanced a second and another. The desk phone rang. No one picked it up. The bag lay on the blotter under a circle of white light. The cut edge of the envelope waited open beside it. The last frame held steady on the bag, and the name written in ink, while a low hallway draft curled the edge of the paper like the start of a whisper that did not yet become a word. At 10:47 p.m., the storm reached its peak. Street cameras along Main flickered in static as sheets of rain bent power lines. The precinct exterior feed showed the flag snapping hard in the wind, lights inside still burning against the storm. At 10:49 p.m., a van without plates rolled to a stop 1 block east. Its headlights cut, doors slid open, and figures in dark jackets spilled out. One carried a duffel, another shouldered a shotgun wrapped in tape. The storm swallowed their footsteps, but the lens caught every silhouette moving low toward the station. At 10:51 p.m., the lobby camera picked up the first breach. The glass door fractured inward with a sharp crack. A canister bounced twice on tile and spewed white smoke. Officers at the desk drew sidearms, their voices muffled by alarms as the smoke thickened. One shouted, "Gas." The feed whited out. In the hallway camera, muzzle flashes cracked bright against the haze. Shotgun blasts hit the lockers, steel buckling. Radios screamed over each other. "Unit compromised, need backup now." Then silence. At 10:54 p.m., exterior feeds showed power dying. One transformer blew near the alley with a flash. The precinct went dark except for emergency strips glowing dim red. Thunder drowned the last street sound. Rain hammered the roof, each downpour loud in the static of every camera left online. Inside, stairwell cameras showed the crew climbing, boots slamming wet on concrete, masks dripping. They pushed smoke grenades down shafts as they rose. Officers scattered into side corridors. Gunfire followed, short and ragged. At 10:57 p.m., the record's wing feed cut in, showing Marcus Reed stepping through haze. He wore a rain jacket slick with water, a pistol steady in both hands. He moved to the archive door where fluorescent emergency strips cast pale green over shelves. Inside, a young man waited armed, his jawline matching the chief's. His voice cut clear on the mic. "You don't belong here," Marcus answered. "You killed her in the house of God." The young man sneered, lifting his rifle. "She didn't belong." Marcus raised his weapon higher. "Neither do you." At 10:59 p.m., lightning split over the roof. The records room camera froze one frame, then returned as gunfire shattered the glass in the office door. The duel circled the room, paper flying, shelves shaking. A round punched a wooden cross hung above the clerk's desk. Splinters rained down. The next shot snapped through the cross itself, sending it clattering onto the tile. The impact echoed flat in the mic. Both men froze for half a beat under the falling wood, then lunged again. The younger man fired and missed. Marcus fired once. The body dropped between shelves, weapons skittering across file boxes. The cross lay on the floor, a bullet hole burned through its center. At 11:02 p.m., a phone left running on a desk in the command office streamed live to social media. The chief was visible back against the wall, shirt soaked from rain blown in. He held both hands out as smoke seeped under the door. His voice broke. "Stop, please, don't hurt me." A second phone filmed the screen and pushed it to multiple platforms. Within 3 minutes the image circulated, the chief begging, mouth open in panic, viewed by thousands. Comments scrolled in real time beneath the feed. Share, save, expose. At 11:06 p.m. riot alarms activated citywide. Sirens merged with thunder into one long howl. Outside, the mural cameras picked up the crowd gathering. Dozens in hoods and masks, some with bats, some with bottles, stood shoulder to shoulder watching the smoke pour from the station. Their chants did not rise. Only silence pressed heavy. Lightning flashed again and illuminated graffiti fresh on the precinct wall. Justice for tenants sprayed in dripping black letters across the badge insignia carved in stone. At 11:09 p.m. the interior feeds caught chaos. Chairs overturned, papers scattered, water dripping through bullet holes in ceiling tiles. A corridor lens showed Denton kicking through smoke with sidearm raised, but his aim snapped left as a masked figure lobbed another grenade. White vapor filled the hall. He vanished coughing, the feed smearing gray. In the records room, Marcus bent, picked up the fallen cross and stared 1 second at the bullet hole through its center. He dropped it, stepped over the body and signaled to the crew. They advanced deeper into shelves stacked with files. At 11:12 p.m. the group located cabinets marked cases sealed. A crowbar pried metal open, files spilling. One member stuffed papers into a duffel, another snapped photos with a phone. The lens recorded folders stamped confidential, dates from 2010, 2015, 2018, all fanning across the tile. Rainwater from their jackets dripped onto the paper. Thunder cracked. A gun discharged somewhere upstairs. The files remained under camera glare, black letters bold on white tabs. Evidence. Internal. Suppressed. At 11:16 p.m. a police drone outside locked onto the roof. Thermal showed figures moving, but signals scrambled in lightning. The drone lost feed. Ground units attempted approach, but smoke rolled out the doors, officers retreating. The scanner log captured one order: hold perimeter. Don't push. Inside, Marcus and his crew advanced past the archive with duffels heavy, weapons up. The live stream of the chief begging still ran unchecked, tens of thousands of viewers climbing. His voice looped. Don't hurt me, please. At 11:19 p.m. the records room camera showed Marcus standing at the doorway, his words cut flat. Bring the war to the precinct. The crew nodded once, silent, as thunder broke overhead. The hallway beyond glowed with dim red strips and smoke rising like fog. The lens locked on the door swinging open, shadows spilling through. The last image froze on the bullet-shattered cross lying crooked on tile, the rain leaking through a broken window, and the sound of the crowd outside building like a tide. At 8:06 a.m. the news cycle opened with a split screen. One side showed Officer Kyle Denton walking down courthouse steps with his badge and weapon sealed in a plastic bag. The other side ran archival footage of flashing sirens from the night of the raid. Anchors read from prepared copy. Internal Affairs investigation. Badge suspended. Misconduct under review. The newsroom ticker scrolled 3 words in red: officer under fire. Reporters pressed microphones toward him. He pulled his jacket collar high, muttered no comment, and forced his way through the crowd. The clip looped through the morning broadcasts until noon. At 9:15 a.m. a drone camera panned over the east end of town. The garage door on Reed's block was pulled shut, padlock bright against the chain. A note taped to the glass read closed until further notice. A neighbor's camera across the street caught 2 officers knocking, waiting, and leaving. No answer. No movement inside. By late afternoon, weeds along the curb bent in the wind, wrappers blew past, and the lock stayed firm. The garage lights never came on. At 11:47 a.m., a diner television played grainy footage of precinct hallways filled with smoke. Captions underlined the words under investigation. Customers watched in silence. A man in a booth muttered, "He's done." The waitress poured coffee, her hand trembling slightly. The clip repeated, Denton coughing in the haze, recorded frame by frame over and over. By 7:33 p.m. the first mural appeared. A wall camera at 7th and King recorded two figures in hooded sweatshirts spraying paint in sweeping arcs. When the paint settled, a giant figure stood holding a steel wrench, face shadowed but unmistakable. Below, bold white letters dripped down the brick. "We fix our own justice." The camera lingered as the artist stepped back, shook the cans, and disappeared into an alley. Cars slowed as they passed, passengers pointing. Phones lifted. Photos circulated within minutes. At 4:01 p.m. the mural was trending. A helicopter news feed showed the crowd gathering, some with hands raised to take selfies in front of the painted mechanic. Reporters stepped into frame with stand-up segments. "Anonymous symbol," one called it. The voiceover played beneath footage of flashing sirens. At 7:22 p.m. a precinct office camera recorded Denton slamming a fist on a desk. Papers flew. His voice cut the air. "Lies, all lies." He looked around the room. Two officers watched without speaking. One whispered, "He's finished." The camera caught every syllable. The words leaked the same night. At 9:48 p.m. a city council meeting streamed live. Protesters packed the chamber, holding printouts of the mural above their heads. Some chanted the words, "We fix our own justice." The microphones clipped from the noise. A councilman struck the gavel repeatedly, shouting for order. His voice could not cut through. At 10:06 p.m. a local feed returned to the garage. The padlock was still in place. The lights still off. A single candle flickered inside a window above the shop. No figure moved in the frame. The night stayed empty except for rain sliding down the lens. At 11:19 p.m. the news anchor's voice dropped lower. Rumors of disappearance. Sources confirm Marcus Reed not located. The screen filled with the mural again, brighter now, sprayed in multiple neighborhoods. "We fix our OWN justice" stretched across walls, train cars, even billboards. The image grew each time, the wrench bigger, the shadow darker. By midnight, the live stream count hit hundreds of thousands. The chief's recorded plea, face wet with rain and fear, continued to circulate. Side by side with it, the mural's message burned across screens. One clip replayed Denton's smirk in court, then cut to the mural with the wrench. The edit went viral before dawn. At 2:12 a.m. the city surveillance system picked up more activity. Three figures painted the slogan across the stone wall facing the courthouse itself. Police units rolled up fast, but the artists melted into the storm. The paint dripped down limestone, letters stark under floodlights. Phones caught the chase. The video spread. At 3:04 a.m. a police radio clipped through static. Someone whispered, "He's a ghost." The dispatcher asked, "Say again." Line went dead. At 4:27 a.m. a news drone swept past the mural at 7th. A candle sat at its base, flame steady in the wind, wax pooled on the sidewalk. A hand-painted sign leaned against the wall. It read simply, "Marcus." The drone hovered. The feed carried live to morning news. Anchors fell silent, the image filling the frame. At 5:55 a.m. a final montage ran across national networks. Denton's badge surrendered. The chief's plea broadcast. The mural glowing in rain. The closed garage door with the padlock untouched. A single voiceover sealed it, cold and without pause. From that night on, the mechanic's name was no longer a name. It was a warning.